inculcated a sense of responsibility in us to have such lectures where we are going to have to listen about the thoughts and the lessons from the Gandhi. So we are thankful to Dr. Nazir Ahmed Gandhi for allowing us and encouraging us for going to such. Last but not least, I also welcome our my colleague, Dr. Nazir Gandhi. It is the personal efforts of Dr. Gandhi that we are able to gather here and we are able to listen to our today's speaker here. I once again welcome all the faculty members of the students, all the educators, our guest speaker from the community for being today with us. Thank you, thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir, for your kind words. Now I will request Professor Bartolf to address the gathering. And Professor Bartolf has already shared information about Gandhi Center in Berlin, Germany, and I'll be sharing with all the participants today. Over to you, Professor Sir.
Yes, first of all, I wish the very best for you, and thank you for your kind invitation, Dr. Kermani, and greetings to Professor Siddiq and Professor Bhatt and Chief Patron Professor Ghani. And now I understand that I'm with you for an international lecture on lessons in tolerance, learning from Gandhi. And I'm with you at Sher-e-Kashmir University of Agricultural Sciences and Technology of Kashmir, Faculty of Fisheries, Rangil, Gandarbal. And actually this topic we chose for this lecture is quite close to my heart, and I would like to inform you about my method of preparation before I start with the contents. Actually, I chose nine quotes of Gandhi on tolerance and toleration. But before, I would like to give you the relevance of this topic with respect to a history of my home country, Germany. In earlier times, there was this edict of Potsdam. Hundreds of thousands of Huguenot Protestant refugees from France found refuge and shelter in Berlin and Potsdam and surroundings. That was 1685 and afterwards. So you can say this is a crew experience. Actually, the rulers in Potsdam opened their doors to the refugees and welcomed the Huguenots as brothers in Christ. So you usually speak about edict of Potsdam as a tolerance edict, and tolerance is connotation is very, very close to the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen of 1789 during the French Revolution. In Article 10, no one shall be interfered with for his opinions, even religious ones, provided that their practice does not disturb public order as established by the law. But also later in the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 18, everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom, either alone or in community with others and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance. And in a way, even in the early definitions of the notion, nation, of the term nation, in the 19th century, Ernest Renan was highlighting the spiritual principle behind the term nation. You can be French, English, German, yet Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, or practicing no religion. So each group member could participate fully in the life of the nation. So this is just to shed some light on the historical background of the term tolerance and toleration. And now I hope that I can give the voice to Gandhi, referring to toleration in a very similar way in his interesting thoughts. Because for me, Gandhi has been a wisdom teacher, a thinker, a philosopher. First of all, he was a visionary for a world federation with equal members based on equality of the citizens, of the world citizens. And actually, the concept of mutual toleration is at the core of his philosophy. And so when we pay respect to Gandhi on the International Day of Nonviolence, the United Nations, 2nd October, Gandhi's birthday, since 2007, then we know that the messages which have been documented in the collected works of Mahatma Gandhi are quite relevant today for our today's problems we face. And now I start with the first text of Gandhi on tolerance. It is in the moment when he discussed about the concept of a fellowship, the fellowship of reconciliation, for example, or other fellowships of interfaith communities, interreligious communities. Then Gandhi wanted to clarify the basic understanding, and you will find a very interesting let me say, a very interesting focus on discussing the point of the oneness. He always stressed the diversity of faiths and beliefs. And you will see in many of these 9 quotes I give you that Gandhi had a very clear vision of the tolerance and toleration between representatives of religions. So in his discussion on fellowship before 15 January 1928, printed in Young India, 19 of January 1928, he said the following: in order to attain a perfect fellowship, every act of its members must be a religious act and an act of sacrifice. I came to the conclusion long ago, after prayerful search and study and discussion with as many people as I could meet, that all religions were true, and also that all had some error in them, and that whilst I hold by my own, I should hold others as dear as Hinduism, from which it logically follows that we should hold all as dear as our nearest kith and kin, and that we should make no distinction between them. So we can only pray if we are Hindus, not that a Christian should become a Hindu, or if we are Muslims, not that a Hindu or a Christian should become a Muslim, nor should we even secretly pray that anyone should be converted. But our inmost prayer should be that a Hindu should be a better Hindu, a Muslim a better Muslim, and a Christian a better Christian. That is the fundamental truth of fellowship. If, however, there is any suspicion in your minds that only one religion can be true and others false, you must reject the doctrine of fellowship placed before you. Then we would have a continuous process of exclusion and found our fellowship on an exclusive basis. Above all, I plead for utter truthfulness. If we do not feel for other religions as we feel for our own, we had better disband ourselves, for we do not want a wishy-washy toleration. My doctrine of toleration does not include toleration of evil, though it does the toleration of the evil-minded. It does not, therefore, mean that you have to invite each and everyone who is evil-minded or tolerate a false faith. By a true faith, I mean one, the sum total of whose energy is for the good of its adherents. By a farce, I mean that which is predominantly farce. If you therefore feel that the sum total of Hinduism has been bad for the Hindus and the world, you must reject it as a false faith. But you must not forget that we have started with the fundamental principle that all religions are true. If there were different but good and true health laws for different communities, I should hesitate to preach some as true and some as false. I am positive that with people not prepared to tolerate one another's religious belief, there can be no international fellowship. Moreover, physical analogies, when applied to spiritual matters, are good only up to a certain point. When you take up an analogy from nature, you can stretch it only to a certain point. But I would take an illustration from the physical world and explain what I mean. If I want to hand a rose to you, there is definite movement. But if I want to transmit its scent, I do so without any movement. The rose transmits its own scent without a movement. Let us rise a step higher, and we can understand that spiritual experiences are self-acting. Therefore, the analogy of preaching sanitation, etc., does not hold good. If we have spiritual truth, it will transmit itself. You talk of the joy of a spiritual experience and say you cannot but share it. Well, if it is real joy, boundless joy, it will spread itself without the vehicle of speech. In spiritual matters, we have merely to step out of the way. Let God work his way. If we interfere, we may do harm. Good is a self-acting force. Evil is not, because it is a negative force. It requires the cloak of virtue before it can march forward. Now the second is from Young India, 10th of November 1920. Difficulties in our way. And this is referring to some verbal rowdyism during a speech of Mrs. Annie Besant, whose place in Adia Theosophical Society I could visit last month. So, referring to rowdyism during the non-cooperation campaign, Gandhi was quite clear, also stressing his principle of mutual toleration. So, referring to this rowdyism, It was a distinct departure from the creed of non-violent non-cooperation. It may easily result in physical violence. Those who created the disturbance ought to realize its seriousness for the sacred cause they have at heart. It is the very worst training we can give ourselves in Swaraj. Swaraj presupposes mutual toleration of views, no matter how distasteful they may be to us. If the non-cooperationists refuse to listen to the other party's views, they lay themselves open to the same charge as the government, which they complain comes to decisions without considering their viewpoint. Non-cooperation against the government is based on and is possible with cooperation among ourselves. We must bring about as far as possible and consistently with our creed harmony among ourselves. And referring to the disobedience, Gandhi warned to misinterpret this concept. He stressed, disobedience is a virtue only when it is resorted to in response to a higher call and has not a trace of bitterness, hostility, or resentment in it. It is a positive vice when it becomes thoughtless, insolent, and rowdy. With a, for us, new method of non-violent non-cooperation, the old must go. The two cannot coexist. If we are engaged in a duel between religion and irreligion, and if we truly represent the forces of religion, we shall have to give up even verbal violence and learn dignified ways of dealing with our opponents. It is through training in cool courage and self-sacrifice, discipline and faith in God, and therefore humility to the uttermost. And we shall conserve the honor of Islam and our country and turn our opponents into admirers and fellow workers. The third quote is from The Key to Success, 31st of October 1924, published in Hindi Navajivan on 2nd of November 1924. By using violence to subjugate one another, we are using violence against our own souls. Instead of the two communities doing their appointed tasks and trying to secure rights by doing their respective duties, they are insisting on the rights alone and have forgotten their duties. India is like a bird whose wings are the Hindus and the Muslims. India is like a bird whose wings are the Hindus and the Muslims, but the wings have become palsied and therefore disabled the bird from soaring high in the air and breathing the pure, bracing air of freedom. Surely, to leave us thus paralyzed is not the essence of Hinduism nor of Islam. Is it the religion for the Hindus to weaken the Muslims and vice versa, for the one to refuse to help the other? Should religion be a destructive force, destroying freedom and all that is best and noblest in man? To tell the Hindus and the Muslims that the only condition on which unity and freedom are possible is mutual toleration amongst all who call themselves Indians, be they Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Parsis, Jews, or whatnot. If we want the unity of the heart to be established, we must emulate Prophet Muhammad in his forgiveness and tolerance. So the fourth of 9 is speech at Advait Ashram Alwaya on 18th March 1925, published in Navajivan on 5th of April 1925. And here Gandhi does what he frequently did. He discussed this ideology of one religion, one God. And Gandhi says, I can understand the principle of one God. In spite of our worshipping him in a million different ways, our adoration finds its way to him. However, I feel that so long as the human race continues, differences of creeds and religions will indeed exist, since there are many minds and not one. If we look at nature, we shall find that it is full of diversities, and it is through them that the one God becomes many. To expect that at any stage in the history of the human race, the world will have a single religion and a single creed is, I think, as good as wishing that the laws of nature should become topsy-turvy. Hence, diverse religions and diverse creeds seem to be inevitable. Tolerance should be our aim. If all of us hold uniform views, where then is the scope for this generous virtue of tolerance? However, this search for uniformity is as futile as looking for flowers in the sky. Hence, the only possible alternative for us is to tolerate one another's views. According to my Muslim friends, I, a born idol worshipper, a believer in incarnation and rebirth, must necessarily cultivate tolerance for Muslims who do not believe in idol worship, who do not believe in incarnation and perhaps in rebirth. I, a believer in incarnations, do not think that Christ alone was God or that he alone was the Son of God. Nevertheless, I should tolerate the fact that my Christian friends look upon Christ as God. And similarly, Muslims and Christians should tolerate the fact that I bow in reference to Kanyakumari and Jagannath. I can see that the age of tolerance is dawning in my own lifetime because tolerance is at the root of the Dharma of Ahimsa. That very same tolerance is also at the root of the Dharma of truth. Truth, like God, has 1,000 diverse aspects. I cannot therefore insist that my view about the nature of truth is the correct one and those of others wrong. That is why I feel we are fast approaching the age of mutual tolerance and mutual love. We have to practice the Dharma of Ahimsa and love in another matter as well. We must free our country from the sin of keeping our own brothers away as untouchables. Now, fifth is the speech of Gandhi at a women's meeting in Belgaum on 8th of November 1920, published in Navajivan, 28th of November 1920. I have learned from Hinduism that one should not respect or despise the religion of anyone else. I have also realized that till we have learned to cherish love for people of all other religions and for all our neighbors, we shall not succeed in our effort for the country's welfare. We have not come here to tell you that you should change and permit people to eat in the company of Muslims or marry among them, but I have certainly come to tell you that we should bear love to every human being. I pray that you teach your children to love members of other faiths. So long as India has not become free, so long as the Muslims' wounds have not been healed, we need to live as fakirs. We should burn up our love of comfort and luxury in the fire of suffering. I entreat you in the humblest words to give up ways of comfort and practice severe tapascharya to keep your heart and mind ever pure. In 1920, published in Young India, 25th of February, on Hindu-Mohammedan unity, Gandhi stressed, and mutual toleration is a necessity for all time and for all races. We cannot live in peace if the Hindu will not tolerate the Mohammedan form of worship of God and his manners and customs, or if the Mohammedans will be impatient of Hindu idolatry or cow worship. It is not necessary for toleration that I must approve of what I tolerate. I heartily dislike drinking, meat eating, and smoking, but I tolerate all these in Hindus, Mohammedans, and Christians, even as I expect them to tolerate my abstinence from all these, although they may dislike it. All the quarrels between the Hindus and the Mohammedans. In a speech in reply to Hedawat's address at Vakalai Sivagiri Hall, 13 March 1925, published in the Hindu on 16 March 1925, Gandhi referred to the concept of diversity again. So long as there are different human heads, so long will there be different religions, but the secret of a true religious life is to tolerate one another's religion. What may appear evil to us in certain religious practices is not necessarily evil to those who follow those practices. I dare not blind myself to existing differences. I cannot rub them off the slate if I would, but knowing those differences, I must love even those who differ from me. You will find an exemplification of this law throughout the world. No two leaves of this very tree under whose shadow we are sitting are alike, though they spring from the same root. But even as the leaves live together in perfect harmony and present to us a beautiful whole, so must we, divided humanity, present to the outsider looking upon us a beautiful whole. That can be done when we begin to love each other and tolerate each other in spite of differences. So, although I see the deep ignorance, the black ignorance of blind orthodoxy, I refuse to be impatient with that orthodoxy, and hence I present to the world the law of nonviolence, and I say that a man who wants to lead a religious life on this earth and a man who wants to realize himself on this earth in this incarnation must remain nonviolent in every shape and form and in every one of his actions. I describe myself as a scavenger, Bangi, and Bangi occupies the lowest rung of the ladder among suppressed classes. I am not ashamed to call myself a Bangi, and I ask every Bangi not to be ashamed of his calling. A Bangi, if he is true to his salt, is a sanitarian. I describe myself also as a weaver, spinner, and farmer. The suppressed classes, the Orthodox say, should remain suppressed because of the vices which they say are inherent in them. It is for you and me to show that no vice is inherent in man. That which is inherent in man is his virtue. Immediately he realizes his own potentialities. Man becomes almost divine. And I would like every one of us to become what he should be and not remain what we are. I'd like to repeat this again. And I would like every one of us to become what he should be and not remain what we are. And now I would like to give you two thoughts of Gandhi on tolerance and toleration, which are quite significant. In this last two quotes, I would like to give you also his method. His method is to pretend to let me say, to criticize a certain term by highlighting the importance of this virtue or of this capacity of the human beings at the very same time, simultaneously, by criticizing, highlighting. So this is here quite obvious in his reference to the word conscience. So please keep in mind that Gandhi is here now trying to highlight the understanding of the golden rule in human ethics. It means the life of each individual should be guided by the golden rule in a certain form. And this golden rule you can translate: don't do to others what you do not others want to you. It means you don't want to apply any methods which you don't want others to apply against you. This is, of course, including violence, but much more, as we know. You find this golden rule in a negative form described in many different religions. And we just published a statement on this in this May. You find this on our internet website. But this is just to give you now the relevance of the following words of Gandhi. Here, he refers to a correspondent who describes the religion of a volunteer, so the understanding of a volunteer, a common denominator of conduct of a volunteer. So this religion of truth again resolves itself into its component parts: Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, etc. For truth will appear to most sincere and conscientious Hindus, Muslims, and Christians as Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity, respectively, as they believe them. The golden rule of conduct, therefore, is mutual toleration, seeing that we will never all think alike and that we shall always see truth in fragment and from different angles of vision. Now, he wrote this in Young India on 23rd of September 1926. It's called Religion of Volunteers. Conscience is not the same thing for all. Whilst therefore it is a good guide for individual conduct, imposition of that conduct upon all will be an insufferable interference with everybody else's freedom of conscience. It is a much abused term. Have all people a conscience? Has a cannibal a conscience? Must he be allowed to act according to the dictates of his conscience, which tells him that it is his duty to kill and eat his fellows? Now, the etymological meaning of conscience is true knowledge. The dictionary meaning is faculty distinguishing between right and wrong and influencing conduct accordingly. Possession of such a faculty is possible only for a trained person, that is, one who has undergone discipline and learned to listen to the inner voice. But even amongst the most conscientious persons, there will be room enough for honest differences of opinion. The only possible rule of conduct in any civilized society is therefore mutual toleration. It can be inculcated among and practiced by all, irrespective of their status and training. In this concept of conscience, by the way, Gandhi is following Kant in his categorical imperative. The famous philosopher whose birthday will be celebrated next year worldwide, he and his concept of perpetual peace are basically referring to this concept of the golden rule in a combination of maxims and principles of behavior, thought, word, and deed. And in his categorical imperative in many versions, you find the same concept, also this understanding of conscience as a guide for the individual, but also the limitation that you cannot impose your insight after searching conscience or letting the inner voice speak to you on others. You cannot impose, let me say, vegetarian ethics as a basic norm for your understanding to live on others. And this is just one of the examples you might imagine. Now, the last, I'm coming to a conclusion, the last source I have identified during the past 2 days, because it is not included in the collected works of Mahatma Gandhi as all other 8 before. But this is a discourse on tolerance, which you find in the Bulletin Young India, 2nd October 1930, on the pages 2 and 3. And this is let me say, a summary of Gandhi's discourse on tolerance. Of course, you can imagine that he authorized this text. And I tried to correct all the different misspellings which I found on the internet, and just will be pleased to read this last text, which might be astonishing to you, with 2 preliminary remarks. One is that in the source, which you find in the Gandhi Heritage Portal, you find sometimes 2 hyphens when he wants to highlight, for example, the imperfection or the defects of our own faith, or the indifference towards one's own faith, or the fanaticism. So he always uses this 2 or 3 hyphens to warn the reader of disregarding his imperfection. So this is just to one preliminary remark. And the second is that Gandhi confesses that he does not like the word tolerance, which is astonishing for us. So that is why I would like to read the text now, complete, and then end my lecture with this. So Gandhi's discourse on tolerance, 2nd October 1930, in Young India Bulletin. I do not like this word, but could not think of a better one. Tolerance implies a gratuitous assumption of the inferiority of other faiths to one's own, whereas ahimsa teaches us to entertain the same respect for the religious faiths of others as we accord to our own, thus admitting the imperfection of the latter. This admission will be readily made by a seeker of truth who follows the law of love. If we had attained the full vision of truth, we would no longer be mere seekers, but become one with God, for truth is God. I repeat this sentence. If we had attained the full vision of truth, we would no longer be mere seekers, but become one with God, for truth is God. But being only seekers, we prosecute our quest and are conscious of our imperfection. And if we are imperfect ourselves, religion as conceived by us must also be imperfect. We have no realized religion in its perfection, even as we have not realized God. Religion of our conception, being thus imperfect, is always subject to a process of evolution and reinterpretation. Progress towards truth, towards God, is possible only because of such evolution. And if all faiths outlined by man are imperfect, the question of comparative merit does not arise. All faiths constitute a revelation of truth, but all are imperfect and liable to error. Reverence for other faiths need not blind us to their faults. We must be keenly alive to the defects of our own faith and must not leave it on that account, but try to overcome those defects. Looking at all religions with an equal eye, we would not only not hesitate, but would think it our duty to adopt into our faith every acceptable feature of other faiths. I repeat this last wonderful sentence again. Looking at all religions with an equal eye, we would not only not hesitate, but would think it our duty to adopt into our faith every acceptable feature of other faiths. The question then arises, why should there be so many different faiths? We know that there are a large variety of them. The soul is one, but the bodies which she animates are many. We cannot reduce the number of bodies, yet we recognize the unity of the soul. Even as a tree has a single trunk, but many branches and leaves, there is one religion, but any number of faiths. All faiths are a gift of God, but partake of human imperfection as they pass through the medium of humanity. God-given religion is beyond all speech. Imperfect men put it into such language as they can command, and their words are interpreted by other men equally imperfect, whose interpretation must be held to be the right one. Every one is right from his own standpoint, but it is not impossible that every one is wrong. Hence, the necessity for tolerance, which does not mean indifference towards one's own faith, but a more intelligent and purer love for it. Tolerance gives us spiritual insight, which is as far from fanaticism as the North Pole is from the South. True knowledge of religion breaks down the barriers between faith and faith and gives rise to tolerance. Cultivation of tolerance for other faiths will impart to us a truer understanding of our own. I would like to repeat the last two sentences again. Tolerance gives us spiritual insight, which is as far from fanaticism as the North Pole is from the South. True knowledge of religion breaks down the barriers between faith and gives rise to tolerance. Cultivation of tolerance for other faiths will impart to us a truer understanding of our own. And now the last paragraph. Tolerance obviously does not disturb the distinction between right and wrong, or good and evil. The reference here throughout has been to the principal faiths of the world, which are all based on identical fundamental principles and which can all point to saintly men and women who held them in the past and hold them now. In the case of good and evil, we have to cultivate charity for the wicked no less than for the good, the sinner no less than for the saint, all the while that we cherish inveterate hatred towards wickedness and sin. And in this last paragraph, Gandhi is connecting the concept of tolerance with the capacity of human beings to distinguish between right and wrong, good and evil, just and unjust. And this is the voice of conscience. So I'm grateful to you that you found the patience to listen to Gandhi through my words. And I hope this might be a contribution to understand Gandhi as a great world thinker whose message is as relevant nowadays as meaningful it has been during the past century. Thank you very much. Yes, it's audible. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'll put it like this. That tolerance should be our aim, and to tolerate one another's view, the best way to summarize is sharing is caring. And if you go ahead with that, you will surely respect the other person's view, the other person's way of perception. And at the end, I would like to thank Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dean Faculty of Fisheries, all officers of the university, heads of the divisions, faculty members, students, all participants for joining us together. And I would request everyone to join hands together in thanking Professor Kristen Bartolf for giving this wonderful lecture. And sir, we assure you that we will implement tolerance in our daily lives. and we will try to implement at least a couple of points out of those 6 to 7 points that you mentioned. If anyone has any questions, most welcome. Any students who have any questions? Any questions?
Sorry, unmute.
What I could understand is, sir, there are no questions. Once again, thanks a lot for interacting with us and blessing with us with your wonderful words and giving us an insight into what tolerance means from Gandhian perspective from the words of Dr. Kristen Bartolf. Thanks a lot. Thank you, sir.
So I thank you and say goodbye to you, and I would like to ask you to stay in dialogue and continue our cooperation in future, and hopefully meet one another once in our lifetime in Germany or in India. It would be, of course, a wonderful experience, and particularly because each meeting and each journey is a rich experience, as we know, and it's also widening the horizon for the diversity of our life. Thank you very, very much for inviting me, and please inform me about a video recording you might have produced of this.
The video recording as well.
Thank you very much. So all the best for you, and would.
Dr. Kristen Bartolf, we are eagerly wanting you to be here in person. So we are giving you an invitation from this past day for your presence in our university here. We will welcome you in offline, your presentation and other things. We welcome you here, sir, in our university.
Yeah, it will be a great joy to meet you in Kashmir. I know about the beauty of your landscape and, of course, the diversity of your culture, and would like to meet you in Kashmir. And, of course, a great thanks to Dr. Ashok Raza, who recommended my lecture to you, and Ashok Malik. And I think it's a great friendship which developed during the past years to interact and have this, let me say, fellowship. Thank you.
Thank you.